So we have a lot to discuss in the post-Melissa recovery. We saw the clips from the Prime Minister just now, but first, let me just get your initial thoughts on, how, first of all, everybody your side okay? How are your family?
Well,
How is everybody doing?
everybody in Kingston is okay. The thing that for me, I do have a large family in terms of relatives, cousins, etc. I'm not sure how they are doing it. I have family in St. Elizabeth. I haven't heard from them yet. But in Kingston, we're okay. Just water damage and some minor repairs that we'll need to do, but for the most part, we're okay.
So we were talking on Twitter, I think today or yesterday, or
Yesterday,
the
yeah.
days are just all a blur right now, about the economic impact, the far-reaching impact of Hurricane Melissa. And then we heard the Prime Minister come in with some numbers. But what were your initial thoughts following just the initial shock? I mean, we were all shocked. We've all been seeing the images. But when you started thinking about it from a financial and economic impact perspective, what are some of the things that crossed your mind?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that I'm not sure any of us could have anticipated the extent to which the damages are. I mean, the rainfall we had in Kingston, there was wind, etc. And I mean, I knew that it would be impactful based on the category and all of that. But when I first saw some of these images, I was waiting to see whether or not they were AI or not, because I just couldn't believe that it was that bad. And the more I kept seeing it, I was like, well, these clearly aren't fake. And then it was just, it was really hard. And one of the things that a lot of persons I know I've spoken to have experienced, there's this term that I learned recently called survivor's guilt, where you feel so guilty that nothing happened to you, or not to the extent that it happened to those affected, that you just don't know how to function. You feel guilty, you feel angry, you feel you're grieving essentially. Even for those who didn't have any family or friends that were impacted. And I know that these things happen all across the world all the time, but it's different when it's literally right next door. It's different when it's persons who it's places where you visited, it's places where you have family, it's places now that it's a fact that it's going to impact just everything. Like our very way of living is going to be different from this point on. And so that was the initial kind of weight that I felt. When I did started to think about, I mean, the first things we did was try to check in on our community members to see how everybody was doing. When we sent out our email, we noticed that about 10% of persons who normally responded. So most of our community members are probably still without email or internet access. So we haven't really heard from everybody in terms of our community as yet. I started to think about the impact in terms of the economy, and then about our investments, right? Because those two are directly related. So the first thing I thought about was the fact that we're gonna be rebuilding potentially for about, my estimate is maybe up to 10 years, right? Because the sheer construction, right? There are roadways that need to be cleared, but things are kind of being moved to the side just to clear a path for cars and vehicles to travel. But there's no real repair that's taking place right now. Once we get persons fed and sheltered, then there'll be the place of prioritizing what will get repaired first. The Prime Minister said it, hospitals and places like that. And then that may take just a few months to keep up with everybody that's coming in little by little. Then you'll have to start to plan how we start repairing infrastructure, how we start repairing the roadways, how we start repairing the essential services that are supplementing the core ones, right? So gas stations would need to be repaired. I heard there was a JPS substation that was destroyed. So things like that we need to rebuild to support all the other things that come, right? So businesses were damaged, that would mean loss of income. Schools were damaged, as not just public schools, private schools, institutions. We don't know if any listed companies were impacted. We assume the ones like Spurtree may be related because that's kind of like farming, maybe. But it's just so much to think about, right? In terms of the overall impact. On the investing side, I would say I started to think about which stocks would start to do well in the next 10 years. Because again, my mindset is the next 10 years, really.
Let's stick a pin there, because I do want to come to that for sure. But you touched on the survivor's guilt, and it's something that I can tell you I have been experiencing for the past week. Because for us here in Kingston, no damage, just minor leak in the bathroom. That was the extent of it. And then in Mandeville, property had minor damage as well, especially in the grand scheme of things compared to what other people have endured. And so on Sunday, I took my kids to a restaurant to go eat. And then I felt guilty about taking them to a restaurant to go eat. I was sitting
because
there
it feels like a luxury now.
I was sitting there thinking, look at us eating in a fancy restaurant when some people now have no food.
Yeah,
I should have donated this money, and I was there chastising myself. And then Monday morning, I took them to school. School started here in the corporate area for many schools on Monday. I took them to school and I said, look at us going to school like nothing happened, when so many other students, children don't even have a school anymore because the school has been destroyed by the hurricane. And then after I dropped them to school, I went to the gym and I'm there working out. I'm like, look at me working out when I should be using my energy to help rebuild and clear roads and volunteer and don't. It was just every little thing was triggering me and making me feel guilty. And then I heard a perspective from Rushcam. I'm like, okay, this is a good way to kind of reframe that conversation, because such a large portion of the country, there is very little economic activity going on right now. For those who still have jobs, they don't have light, they don't have internet, they cannot do it. And many businesses have been destroyed completely. And then the businesses that do exist, people now have no money to spend because they've lost everything. And so the rest of the country that has been so devastated is going to be depending on the economic power of Kingston, the spending power of us here.
The taxes collected from Kingston.
Taxes collected to boost the economy. So all the people who have jobs in Kingston, who are employed, so even if you're spending on a luxury like going to a restaurant, you're supporting that business, which in turn pays their employees, who may in turn be helping their family in Westmoreland and Trelawney and wherever they are. And I thought that was a really good way to kind of reframe that conversation and that survivor's guilt that many of us are feeling. So even if we're not directly contributing, there are indirect ways of helping just by resuming normal economic activity here where we can.
Yeah, so I'll say you definitely want to contribute in some way, shape, or form, because that part is important, meaning
it is.
I know there are concerns about how funds will be used, etc., but there are so many channels to give back. I'd find some way to. I think though it's important to understand how it all works, right? And what I thought about that may work is that you have a lot of persons who are young, who are strong, who are maybe unemployed in the other parishes that could be put to work maybe through a volunteer program or something like that, that could aid in terms of the day-to-day support that may be needed, because maybe those persons were looking for work anyway. And so maybe there's some way to channel resources in that way, but it wouldn't be necessarily productive for us to be able to, the things that you mentioned, the gym, etc., those are things that allow you to function in terms of what you do in terms of KRM, taking stock, etc. So
your mental health at a time like this.
So that's going to be important. But I think, and one of the things that we discussed in our church is that the thing that you're feeling, redirect it into something that is actually productive in terms of aiding to the recovery, right? So guilt is not productive in any way, right? So I mean, think about it, appreciate the mercies and the blessings that you have. Look to see how you can help, but just understand that you're going to need to function, right? Because when my impulse, and my wife is who's probably watching this, I was like, let's just give everything we can, all we can. But then, she's like, well, what about our staff that we'll need to pay in 30 days? Because I'm also thinking about the business impact for us, right? Our industry relies a lot on the stock market. If there's not the same activity, how would that fare for us? How do we contend with higher costs that we know are coming? Things like that. So it's a balance, but I think we should contribute in some way, shape, or form, but also understand that some amount of normalcy is going to be important for us to not all just grind to a halt.
Yeah, and if you can't give money, give your time. And
Exactly.
The thing is as well, so another reason I was feeling guilty is that, okay, I hadn't volunteered yet, right? Because I have the kids and there's nobody to watch the kids. My helper house she lost her roof.
Yeah.
And then I realized, listen, these people are going to need help for weeks and months on end. And right now, in the immediate aftermath, there is going to be this influx of people who want to volunteer. Everybody wants to volunteer. Everybody wants to go down St. Elizabeth. Everybody wants to go Westmoreland and all these places. And in a couple months, you won't see the same level of volunteerism, the same level of energy as people start getting back to their normal lives. And I just want to remind people that there will still be the need for volunteers for months and possibly years, as Jermaine said, to come. So if you're unable to do so, no, don't feel bad. There's going to be countless opportunities. There's going to be a long period of time where your help will still be needed.
Yeah, it's more about sharing the load. It's like saying too many cooks, right? If you have too many persons trying to do the same thing in the same area at the same time, which is why, one of the things I'm hoping for is greater visibility as to the scope to which we've been taking on the recovery and relief, right? So for example, which areas have not been visited yet, which persons maybe have not been accounted for yet. It would be good to know this information so that persons know where to go, because there are persons who want to help, who have the resources and availability, but they don't know where to go. Persons are also kind of questioning where is safe to go, because we've also heard some stories of persons who are being taken advantage of in terms of as they're going to offer help. So some sort of coordination in that way would be helpful from a country level, so that we know how to channel our desire to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier, and I told you to stick a pin in your thoughts about the stock market and the long-term outlook. What were you going to say there?
So I'll say it in two ways. So in the short term, I think that you're going to see stocks that are in industries like construction or medical, fixtures, plumbing, hardware, and manufacturing stocks. I think those are the ones to watch in the short term. I've already seen some stocks up 40% in the last three trading days. Some are up 20%, 10%, etc.
Which ones are those?
Well, Atlantic Hardware has been doing especially well. So they've recovered to above IPO price now. I think they ended the day at maybe 128, 129. They were trading around 88 cents before the market reopened. Now they're at $1.30. There's also Lumber, because there's a relationship between the two. So Lumber, if you look at the sell queue for Lumber, I think there are only 3 or 4 orders to sell, right? So not many persons are selling there. There's also stocks that on the other side now that have been growing throughout the year, that investors have been taking profit from to reinvest in those companies that they think are going to be doing well now. So we saw Jamaica that was at $4.24 come down to actually below $4. And I think that was, based on a whole conversation, which I'm not sure we'll have time to talk about, but you can let me know there. And then RPL, who was somewhere almost at 470, we're seeing now below to maybe about 370 thereabouts. So
Regency Petroleum, they're based in Sav, right?
yes, so they're gonna reopen tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we
Okay.
were trying to reach the CEO for a couple of days because we weren't sure if he was okay. Because we do earnings calls with them, but Monday he responded to say, you know, they're okay. He's again just highlighting the extent to which things were damaged. He's in Kingston temporarily, so he had light and, you know, so to be able to respond to us. So I saw on their social media that they're going to reopen tomorrow.
That's good to know. And then for the long-term outlook, you said you're looking at 10 years to rebuild.
Yes. So to me, in terms of, so I think that there are industries that aren't being considered right now that are going to play a big part. That we're not talking about services like agriculture or even animals, right? I saw somebody share a video of all of their goats that would have died from the storm. So there's going to be some challenges there. So I think because there's such a focus on just relief right now, we haven't really begun to see, and there's still some amount of shock. We haven't really fully considered the impact to all of the industries that are at play here. So we are pretty much, I think, living from what we would have already had, because, you know, most of us who work 9 to 5 got a salary a week or two ago. At the end of this month, we're going to see higher costs, which is going to impact our ability to do things long term. So things that we consider luxuries in the medium term, like let's say that I wanted to do some renovations on my house, that may be delayed. So though I think there'll be a boom in some industries, I think there'll be a slowdown in quite a bit. Tourism is one of them while we try to rebuild, because there are some persons who are, for example, feeling like they should be staying away from Jamaica. But I saw Throp on his live stream saying, you know, persons should be coming to Jamaica now because we need those resources to be able to invest back into relief. So some persons may be staying away from the country, which will impact the tourism sector. Transportation sector may be impacted because I saw Knutsford Express trade down as well, because persons may be thinking maybe they don't have the same accessibility to certain areas, so that may impact their revenues. So we may need like a dedicated show to just talk about the extent of the impact that I'm seeing in the medium to long term. But what I do think is that as an investor, you should certainly be, if you're not investing for the long term, you should be rebalancing right now. And in the medium term, you should be thinking now, I think, with a 3-year outlook, because even those companies that are doing well now, you're not necessarily going to see immediate impact on their financials. The next set of financials we'll get will be Q3, which is end of September. That's before the hurricane. And then the Q4 numbers aren't coming out until February. So even though some stocks are gaining now, you're not really going to see the impact of those numbers in terms of what they could potentially do until sometime next year, maybe Q3, Q2 to Q3. So I think there'll be an initial run up, some amount of correction and profit taking. And then when we start to see the impact of some of these companies bearing what I think are going to be some significant losses, the market may pull back a little and then just start to rebuild slowly from there.
You know, as you mentioned, Throp earlier, Winthrop Wellington, a hotelier based out in Negril, Jamaican returning resident, basically. Yeah. And he's been providing stellar service, giving us updates. Daily updates from Negril. He has an investment conference coming up later this month, November 16th to 19th, I believe. I'm actually going to be a part of that. And I assumed that he would have, canceled or postponed the event, but that event is actually still happening. He's still having the event. So when I spoke to him, I reached out to him a few days ago to ask him, what's going on with the event? Are you going to postpone? He said, no. He said, everybody who's been involved wants to go ahead with the event, primarily because that event targets Jamaicans who want to relocate back home or who want to invest back home. So you have a lot of Jamaicans in the diaspora who come down specifically for that event, and they still want to come. And I can understand that urge to want to come, and we need them to come more than ever now. So just so you guys know, that conference is still happening in the Grill in a couple of weeks.
It's certainly worth it. Throp is very invested in the region. He does weekly live streams just showing around the Grill. He's always been pro Jamaica, and I do think we have a great opportunity to get significant financial support from the diaspora. So I think platforms like his is likely going to grow as a result of this, because he's been just so consistent in terms of giving updates. And I'm sure if he's able to get the right partnerships that I know he's looking for, we'll be able to funnel those resources in a meaningful way. Because all of his service in terms of content has always been to build up the country. So I think it's a perfect time for his platform to get more attention.
Yeah, and for those of you who are interested, you're looking for an opportunity to come, you don't know where to channel whatever it is you want to do.
Exactly.
The website is thropx.com, thropx.com. I just posted it in the chat. Thropx, yeah, that's it, thropx.com. Well, thank you so much for your perspective, Jermaine. We need to collaborate some more for sure. We were supposed to do a collaboration before all of this, and here we are now, but we'll do some more work together soon.